What happens when a guard at a train station rudely pushes an elderly man with a cane, mistaking him for a homeless man? He had no idea who the old man was. What happened next changed them both, forever. He arrived too early. It had always been that way, ever since the days when being late could cost a life. A habit. It remained even now, when no one had long ago organized columns, or demanded a regimented step, or called him by rank. No one was waiting for him now. Not at home, not here, at the station with its peeling walls, with the smell of coffee and cheap donuts, with the voices of the dispatchers, in which there was neither sympathy nor hope. Harold Stanton stood at the edge of the platform. His fingers clutched the handle of his cane as if it could hold him not only physically, but inwardly from the shiver that began somewhere under his ribs. The coat hung heavy on his shoulders, the collar broken, making everything seem even more uneven. Beneath the hat was gray hair, cut in an almost military style. He didn't follow fashion. Didn't know how. And he didn't want to. Just lived as best he could. Alone. He wasn't looking for a train. He was looking for his son. John was gone. Somewhat mundane, not loud. First he stopped calling. Then he didn't answer his letters. Harold waited at first. Then angry. Then silence. And then today, he came. He just got up and drove, because he felt that if not now, then never. The crowd around was living a different life. Someone was smoking behind the fence. Someone was shouting into the phone. Someone was rushing to the ticket office, swearing through his teeth. None of it had anything to do with him. He was like a lost frame of an old movie, left in a new movie slot. Superfluous. Irrelevant. He walked up to the information desk. A small window. Behind the glass, a girl with a blank face. Not angry. Just detached. "Excuse me," her voice sounded quiet, husky. "There was a man working here. John Stanton. Can you tell me, we don't have access to personal data." The girl didn't even look at it. "You'll have to go to Human Resources." "Where are they?" "It's the day off." He didn't say anything for a second. Nodded. Thanked me. Backed off. And that's when he showed up. The guard. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Red-faced, young, but with that expression that comes from those who have worked with people too long without liking them. He didn't say hello. He just walked over, stood next to me. "Sir, you can't stand here." Harold turned his head slightly. "I'm waiting." "This is no place to wait. Please come into the hall. I'm looking for my son." Once again, this is no place to stand. Do not obstruct the passage. And just then, something in Harold clicked. Not loudly, not theatrically. It just clicked. Because everything in him, over the years, had gotten used to that kind of "please" with the intent to supplant. He didn't object. He just stood there. Because he had no one but this moment left. No plans, no time. Only the search. The guard stepped closer. And he couldn't resist. He pushed. Not with rage. Not with hatred. Just, like pushing away something old and in the way. With a shoulder. A body movement. As if in the middle of something. As one does with things that no longer matter. Harold staggered back. The cane clinked against the floor. His back hit the column. He didn't fall, but his face turned pale. And with the fall of the cane, something small, metallic came off him, caught on the edge of his coat and slipped out. It fell. It tinkled. Familiar. The guard froze. Then he bent down. And saw the badge. An army badge. Scuffed, pressed letters. And a name. And the date. And USMC. He read it out loud. Without emotion. Almost machine-like, Harold Stanton. Marines. Vietnam. And his voice trailed off. He hadn't expected to be so jarred. The guard stared at the badge as if for the first time in his life he was seeing not just a piece of metal, but a story no one was prepared for. There was no gloss, no movie heroics. There was only silence, the kind of silence that remains after gunshots. The kind of silence that old men live in, where no one asks them who they were for a long time. "Were you in the service?" the guard asked. The words came hard, as if they were stuck somewhere between his teeth and his throat. Harold looked at him for a long moment. Not with reproach. Not even with pain. With a kind of tired indifference. Like a man who'd been punched in the face so many times, mentally, physically, administratively, that one more blow didn't matter. "Served," he nodded. "But not to you." "I'm sorry." The guard rubbed his neck, averted his eyes. "I just thought you were, well, homeless, maybe. We got a lot of them around here. Always hanging around. It's all right. You were just doing your job." Harold slowly bent down, picked up his cane. His knees crunched so hard that even the guard flinched. Then he picked up the badge. He held it in the palm of his hand. Thought about whether to put it back behind his collar, on his chest. Or whether there was no point. "You know," he said, looking at the guard again, "the strangest thing is to be alive when everyone you lived with is dead. Or they've forgotten you. Which is worse, I don't know." The guard stepped back. He wanted to say something, but he didn't. Just stepped back, like people who don't know how to deal with guilt do. He wasn't a bad guy. He just didn't know he was facing a man who had seen too much. Who just wanted to know if his son was alive. Harold stepped aside. He sat down on the edge of a wooden bench where the boards creaked and smelled of old varnish. His fingers clutched the token. His eyes ran over the faces of those passing by. He wasn't looking for sympathy. He was looking for features. A face, a silhouette, a posture, something of John. At least a shadow. At least something. Nearby, at the coffee machine, stood a woman with a child. The boy dropped his glove, and Harold picked it up without thinking. He gave it to her silently. The woman smiled. Thanked him. And then she looked longer than was customary. "Excuse me," she said. "Weren't you, in Vietnam?" He turned to her. The same tired truth in his eyes. "I was. My father was in the service. But he never came back." He nodded. Silently. "I'm sorry, just, thank you." She took the boy, left. And he stayed. Alone. With a badge and a bad back and a face that almost no one recognizes anymore. Because age doesn't just erase wrinkles, it erases importance. He stood up again. The cane clanked on the tiles. The station breathed its bustle as if nothing had happened. Harold moved toward the ticket booth, not for a ticket. For the hope that someone might know where to find John. He took another step and stopped. Behind him, someone called out, "Hey! Hey, sir! Wait!" It was the same woman. "I just remembered something." "Wait a minute. Did you say John Stanton?" He turned around. "Yeah. He worked here. I remember that name. He disappeared about 2 months ago. And then someone said he was seen in an old railroad car, behind the workshops. I don't know exactly, but maybe that's where you should go." She spoke quickly, confused. But sincere. Harold listened. Nodded. Her words sounded like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man, not because he couldn't swim, but because he was too tired. He thanked her. And went on his way. Outside the workshop smelled different. Oil, rust, old rails. Not the ones the trains ran on, but the ones that were left behind, overgrown with weeds and forgotten. No passengers walked there. No one smiled there. And, as a rule, no one went in there with goodies. Harold walked along the fence, shabby as old teeth. The paint was peeling, the chain was rusting, the door hung on a single hinge. It felt like he wasn't going to his son, but back in time, back to a place where there was still something to be said. Or at least finish listening. He came upon the watchman. He was sitting on a crate eating a burrito that had already spilled sauce all over his pants. "Hey, where you going, Grandpa?" "I'm looking for someone. John Stanton. He used to work here." The watchman looked suspicious, then sighed. He used to be like that. Silent at first, then a drunk. Got himself to the point where he slept in a freight car behind the fifth line. They pulled him out of there like a corpse. I helped myself. Harold didn't react. Just a twitch of his cheek. Just a flicker. Like a man who's figured it out but decided not to fall yet. Where is he now? They say he's in an orphanage or some kind of center. I can't say for sure. But Martha at the front desk seemed to know something. Or Larry, he's a warehouse guy. Try the admin office, second floor, the door with the union sign. Harold nodded. Thanked him. The watchman suddenly said, "Listen, if you find him, tell him I forgive him. I was mad at him the other day. But maybe it was my own fault. We rarely know what's inside a man. We think if it stinks, it means he's nothing." With these words he finished his coffee from a plastic cup and turned back to the truck. Harold went on his way. He was in no hurry. He didn't know how to anymore. And there was no point. When you're looking for someone who's given up everything, you can't make a fuss. You just keep walking. One step at a time. Even if your legs betray you, your heart clenches and your blood rumbles in your head like you're under fire again. He found the door. The sign was skewed. Inside, dim lights, old computers, the smell of dust and cheap air freshener. Behind the desk was a woman in her 40s with a lock of hair and a tired face. She was on the phone, typing something in parallel. "Miss," he began quietly. "Excuse me, am I interrupting?" She looked up. The way one looks at someone who asks rather than demands. "Yes. I was told you might know what happened to John Stanton. He used to work here. Maybe you heard." The woman tensed up. Rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Yeah. I remember. He hung in there for a long time. Then he blew it. Who are you?" "I'm his father." She stopped talking. There was something awkward, almost painful in her face. "I'm sorry. I don't know where he is now. But," she stood up, walked over to the closet, pulled out a cardboard folder. "Here. His stuff. No one took it after he was discharged. We didn't know where to send it. Maybe you dash." She held out a gray paper bag. Harold took it. His hands trembled, like a man opening a package from another time. Inside was an old baseball cap with a railroad logo on it. A book without a cover. The photo is of a little boy on a man's shoulder. About 10 years ago. The photo is too light. Too heavy. On the bottom, a scrap of paper. An address. "This seems to be the address of the center where they took him," the woman said. "I'm not sure. But we can try." He nodded. Slowly. No words. Went outside, opened the photo. Looked at it. His heart twitched. Because that boy is a grandson. The one he'd never seen. He sat down on a bench at the bus stop. Nearby smelled like tobacco and wet wood. There had been a fine rain, not even rain, but drops that seemed to just hang in the air. People were walking by. Some were looking. Some didn't. He didn't notice. There's a photo in his hand. On it is the face of his son, still light, not extinguished. Next to it, a boy about 5 years old. The one he didn't even know his name. He could feel the tension building under his skin, not like pain, but like something sticky and clammy and cold. Like there was something stirring inside that didn't want to come out, but it was breaking through anyway. Guilt. For everything. For not speaking up when I should have. For keeping quiet when I was screaming inside. The bus arrived late. Harold got up, got in, paid with change. Sat by the window. Held the bag in his lap. Didn't talk to anybody. The driver glanced through the mirror. Maybe he thought he was just another silent grandfather who'd gotten the wrong route. It didn't matter. The trip was short. The center was on the outskirts, a gray building wedged between a warehouse and a drugstore. On the outside, a shabby sign, a green cross, and the phrase, "We don't cure, we return." That's weird. What do you mean, return? To where? Harold went in. At the entrance is a counter with a receptionist, a young guy with glasses who is clearly too tired to look at people. Good afternoon. I'm looking for John Stanton. I was told he was here. The guy nodded, looked at the monitor, tapped on the keys. We've got him. Second week. He's stable. But he's not talking. He's barely eating. Are you a relative? I'm the father. The receptionist looked up. It was that look people get when they suddenly realize they're not just a customer, but a drama, naked and real. He became more serious. Go to the waiting room. I'll get the social worker. Harold went in. It smelled of bleach and something sour, like a cheap hospital. The walls were painted pale blue. The chairs were plastic and creaky. On the wall was a poster that said, "Every morning is a chance to start over." He looked at the poster. Wanted to grin, but couldn't. He didn't have every morning. He had perhaps one single attempt left. The door opened. A woman entered. About 50 years old. Her hair was in a ponytail. Her gaze was attentive, not tedious. Harold Stanton. Yes. My name is Meg. I'm the curator. Is John your son? Yes. He's severely malnourished. Alcohol intoxication, liver complications. His psyche is compromised. He's in isolation, under observation. He made contact this morning. First time in 2 months. Harold was silent. He said one word. Father. It pierced. Not like a knife. Like the quiet click of a lock. An internal one. Could I see him? Meg nodded. Only for a few minutes. He's weakened. And, might not recognize you right away. He nodded. His fingers trembled. He didn't ask for water. He didn't ask to calm down. He just got up. And walked. The door opened without a creak, but the sound of footsteps on linoleum could be heard clearly. Harold stepped into a room that smelled of medicine, old linens, and a kind of stale silence. It was not the silence of peace, but the silence of a flooded basement, heavy, viscous, echoing inside. On the bunk was a man. A thin, hunched figure under a gray blanket. His hair is tangled. Cheeks sunken. Eyes closed. For tube in his hand. An electronic monitor beeping in time with his pulse. Harold froze. He didn't have a line ready. Not one. All the words that had seemed important on the way here were gone. All that remained was the truth. The way it is. No excuses. No commercial breaks. He walked over to the bed. Sat down on the plastic chair next to it. Creaked. Rested his palms on his knees. John, the eyes on the bunk twitched. Opened. A hazy, uncertain look. Then a sharp intake of breath. It was like something inside him jerked. It's me, Harold said, hoarsely. Your father. Silence. No anger. No joy. Only numbness. I don't know why you disappeared. And maybe you don't know why I didn't stop you. Maybe I disappeared too, before. John looked at him. The pause was long. And then, his eyebrows twitched. A tear. One. A silent one. I didn't think, he blurted out. Harold nodded. Neither did I. He didn't know if he could hug now. Whether he could even touch. His hand hovered in the air. Then it dropped. It stayed on the edge of the bed. Close. It was just there. You're alive. That's a lot. John turned away. But he didn't close his eyes. He looked out the window. There was nothing there. Just gray sky and wires. But perhaps for the first time in a long time, he wasn't looking out into the void, but at the point where someone was still around. They sat there for so long. In silence. No explanations. No repentance. Just two people who had lost each other, but suddenly found themselves in the same room, where between them, not an ocean, but 6 steps and bitterness. When the nurse came in, Harold stood up. I'll come back tomorrow, he said. Good, John whispered. Just, don't disappear. It wasn't forgiveness. It was, a beginning. The next morning he came again. It wasn't early enough to sleep, but he didn't want to lie down. There was no clear thought in his head. Just the feeling that something had come back. Not all of it. Not all at once. But it was back. In the waiting room, the nurse recognized him at first sight. Nodded. Let him in without a word. Harold walked down the same corridor, counting his steps like information, only now the march was lonely. He wasn't carrying a flag. He wasn't a hero. Just a father. John sat by the window. A chair with wooden arms, creaking. There was a blanket on it. On his lap, the same old photograph. The one that was in his bag. He held it with 2 hands, like something fragile. Like a memory you want to rewrite, but can't. Hi, he said without turning his head. Hi. I thought you weren't coming. I thought you wouldn't want to. I don't know what I want. Neither do I. The dialogue was simple. Almost helpless. But behind it were years. Missed holidays. Unheard conversations. Letters that were never written. And dreams that didn't include each other. Harold sat across the table. Brought with him an apple and a book. An old one. Military prose. John grinned. You're still reading that crap. Better than the therapeutic pamphlets with flowers. John chuckled. There's a magazine out there, by the way, that says, a father who pays attention has already accomplished a feat, right, and the mother who makes the soup is a Holy Spirit. They laughed. For the first time, not as strangers. It was hoarse, broken. But it was real. The kind you laugh when there's not a void between phrases, but a shared experience. Even if it was bitter. I dreamt about my mom today, John said. She was walking down the beach and waving. But, not to me. Someone behind me. I stood there, I didn't know whether to call out to her or not. Harold listened. His gaze grew deeper, softer. But he didn't interrupt. Would you have called? No, he answered. I would have followed her. Why? Because I would have known you could do it. John lowered his eyes. I didn't. Then it's a good thing I didn't leave. It was a moment. One of those where something quietly inside is rebuilding. No fireworks. Just a brick shifting. And the air starts to flow differently. Time passed slowly in the room. Not as in the hospital, but as in memories, not by the minute, but by the looks, the sighs, the long pauses. Harold read aloud. Not because John asked him to, but because the silence between them needed something to fill. And the words of the book were a kind of bridge, flimsy, wooden, but at least some kind of bridge. He stood at the cliff, and it seemed to him that the past was whispering behind him, but he did not turn around, because he knew that there was only the abyss. Harold looked up from the page. "That's a little too pathetic," John grumbled. "Yeah. But it's on point. Did you turn around a lot?" "Every damn day. But then I stopped. Not from pain, from fatigue. And now? Now, I don't know." Silence. John looked out the window. Out in the backyard, the cleaning lady was walking, waving her mop with a weariness that only comes from those who do everything alone. No praise. No thanks. Just because there's no other way. "I wanted to call," John said, quietly. "Several times. I even dialed the number." "Why didn't you?" "Because I knew you'd say, 'I told you so.' And I didn't want to hear that. I wanted you to say something else. But I was afraid you wouldn't." "I wouldn't have," Harold answered. "Maybe I would have then. But not now. Too bad it's too late for now. Better late than dead." John grinned. "Did you come up with that yourself?" "No. Stole it from the guy with the neck tattoo and the crutch. He was smarter than both of us." Then John asked, "Are you glad you came?" Harold nodded. "I was afraid to. Not because you're sick. It's because I am too." "You? An old Marine? With medals?" "Yeah. Only my disease is called fucked up." It was said without pathos. No self-deprecation. It was just a fact. As a statement. And there was more power in that simplicity than in any memoir. "Would you like some soup?" John asked. "Are you gonna make it?" "No. They got it here. It's lousy, but it's warm." "Then I'll have some." They ate in silence. From plastic bowls. With spoons that bent when pressed. The food was nothing. But they shared a meal like old times. No talking. Just side by side. In the evening, Harold got up. "I'll come again tomorrow." "What if I'm not in the mood?" "Then I'll sit in the hallway. I'll wait for you to come back." "Where?" "Inside." John nodded. And for the first time, not as a patient, not as a son, but as a man who was trusted. On the third day, their meeting began with silence. Not tense, quiet. Like two people who no longer needed to feign interest, no longer needed to find the words to prove their worth. Harold came in the morning, carrying an old paper bag. Smelled like a closet and mothballs. "Brought you a shirt. Not hospital style," he said, pulling a plaid shirt out of the bag as he entered the room. "It's old. But it's yours. You left it when you left home. I thought you'd pick it up later." "I don't even remember it." "Neither do I. But I kept it anyway. Just in case." John took it in his hands. He ran his fingers over the fabric. The shirt was warm, washed 100 times, smelled like home. The one that was gone. "Were you angry when I left?" "No. I was confused. And then stupidly proud. And then tired." "So was I." They didn't pursue the subject. Each held his own weight. It was too early to share. But to recognize the existence, already a step. After breakfast, they went outside. The center had a tiny courtyard with 2 benches, a couple of trees, and a scarecrow that had apparently been used as part of the therapy garden before. Now it was sagging, with its head skewered. John sat down on the bench. Harold beside him. "Look. Just like the old people in the park," John grinned. We are old men. Just without ducks and without a thermos. Where's the thermos? If I'd known, I'd have brought it. You didn't like coffee, though. You didn't put sugar in it. Always said sweets were for wimps. That was a lie. They watched a young nurse walking down the path with a watering can, watering the withered flower beds. She was followed by a boy, about 6 years old. Apparently the son of someone on the staff. He held a small bucket and tried to step in time. Then he fell. He cried. Is he going to walk or is he going to sit? Harold asked. He would. But only if someone stands next to him. So did you. I didn't cry. But I fell down loudly. John chuckled. Then he got more serious. You know what hurts the most? What? That for a moment I thought you were dead. And then I thought it would be easier if you were dead. Because then you wouldn't have to let yourself be bored. That phrase hung in the air. It was heavy. But honest. I thought the same thing, Harold said. That if you're gone, that's it, that's it. Then I remembered how you laughed when you were a kid, when it snowed. And I realized no one else laughed like that. It's weird. I don't remember that. Well, I do. That's why I'm here. John looked away. But his shoulders slumped, not as if from weight, but as if they were no longer defensive for the first time in a long time. They sat until lunchtime. Not as patients and relatives. But as two people who had finally found a pause in which everything fit, pain, fatigue, loss, and something else. Something like a beginning. That evening, as they were about to say goodbye, Harold suddenly said, "Tomorrow is Saturday. There are fewer trains. Do you want to go to the station?" John raised his eyebrows. Why? Just to see. The old place. Maybe you'll remember what they used to call you in the shop. Or show me that workshop where you were always redoing things for idiots, as you wrote in your letters. I thought you didn't read them. I threw them away. And then I'd pull them out of the trash. Then John said, "If you drive, let's go." They took a cab. The car was old, the interior smelled of dog shampoo. The driver was talkative, but quickly realized that the passengers were in the mood for silence. The radio played old blues. Harold looked out the window. John was looking at his palms. "It's strange," John muttered. "It's like I've been living in a movie all this time where I wasn't there. Just noise. Faces. Lights. And an emptiness inside. I know the feeling. Yeah. I got it when I got back from Vietnam. Everything felt like it was mine, but it felt foreign. Even my home felt like a stage set. What did you do?" "I pretended. Till I believed it. And now? I've stopped pretending. I'm just living." They pulled up. The station greeted them with the same smell of coffee, concrete and indifference. People were in a hurry. The voices of dispatchers rang overhead. John's steps were tentative but unassisted. Harold kept close by. Not as a guard, not as a rescuer, as a man whose knees were also shaking. It was the same guard who stood at the platform. The one who had pushed. He saw them and froze. Everything on his face, shame, doubt, uncertainty. Was that him? John asked, in a low voice. It was him. Did you hit him afterwards? No. Why? Because I'd already gotten mine. He's just getting started. They came closer. The guard took a step forward. Then he froze. Then he exhaled, "Sir. Mr. Stanton. I didn't know. Then. It's all right," Harold said. "No need to make excuses." The guard shifted his gaze to John. Confused. Are you the John? The one who worked in the shop?" "Ex-John," he replied, grinning wryly. "I'm sorry. We didn't know you were in trouble. We just thought you'd quit." "I did quit. Just from myself." There was an awkward pause. Harold took a step, put his hand on the guard's shoulder. "Listen to me. We've all been fools once. The important thing is not to stay that way forever." The guard nodded. And, for the first time in a while, held out his hand. John shook it. No theater. Just shook it. Like a man who had decided not to hide anymore. They walked around the shops, the empty booths, the old locker room that still smelled of oil and dust. John talked quietly. No pride. No regret. Just the way it was, where he sat, where he swore, where he smoked in secret. Harold listened. He didn't understand everything. But most importantly, he understood the tone. And there was no more hopelessness in that tone. They went outside as the sun was setting. The air was dense, as if before a rainstorm. "Shall we go home?" Harold asked. "Home?" John interjected. "Is there still one?" "If it's just the two of us, yes." The house greeted them with a silence that smelled of old wood and locked dust. Harold opened the door, fiddled a bit with the key. It had been sticking since the frame had warped. John stood behind him, taking his time crossing the threshold. "Come in," his father said simply. "It's the same. I didn't change anything. I didn't want to, in case you—" He didn't finish. John walked in. The first thing that hit him was the smell. Not rot, not damp. It was the memory. The dry apples in the pantry, the linoleum with the smell of wiped mops, the silence of evenings when there's only one person in the house. When even the TV talk is boring. "Shit," John exhaled, looking at the wall in the hallway. "That wallpaper. I hated it. You said, it's okay if it's not in colors. And I kept waiting for you to do it yourself, like you said. But you never came back." They went into the kitchen. Harold took off his jacket, hung it up. Took the mugs out of the cupboard. Put the kettle on. All in silence. From memory. No hospitality. Just routine. John sat down at the table. He ran his fingers over the old tablecloth. There, beneath the borscht stain, was still a drawing of a ship he'd carved with a knife as a child. He remembered how he'd gotten a scolding for it. And then how his mother had said to his father, "Leave it. At least have something of your own in this house." And then silence. "I kept thinking about this kitchen," John said quietly. "It was as if someone else had lived here instead of me. Confident. Fun. Like it was a movie and I was just a spectator. And I'd thought all these years, if you'd called, I'd have cancelled everything. Everything. My second wedding. I'd move if I had to. If only you'd come." John looked at him carefully. For a long time. Then he said, "I did call. Once. Very drunk. You picked up the phone. Do you remember?" Harold frowned. Nodded slowly. "You didn't say anything. Just hung up." Silence. Dense. Like a fog that no words could dispel, or boiling water from a kettle that had already begun to whistle. "I was angry," Harold said. "But not at you. I was angry with myself. I thought you were calling to die. And I didn't know what to say. Because if you died, I'd never have been able to come up with an excuse. And I wanted to hear anything. Even if you had said, 'Die.' That would have meant you cared." Dad turned off the stove. Poured boiling water. Brought tea. No sugar. No cookies. Just hot water and brew. "I know now. I'm sorry I didn't know before." They sat with their palms around their mugs. Staring at the table. Spoons in the cups, unmoving. Did you really get married a second time? I did. Did she leave? She left. She said I was cold. That I was dead. And I thought I was just keeping it warm. And I was afraid you hated me. I was afraid you'd disappear before I could tell you I couldn't live without you. It wasn't a confession. It was an exchange of silence that had finally learned to speak. In the evening they did the dishes together. Both silently, without commands or thanks. Harold did the washing, John did the wiping. The movements were unsynchronized, but they felt more than just routine helped the fear of drifting off into loneliness again. Even for 10 minutes. After dinner, Harold spread an old bedspread on the living room couch and brought out a spare blanket. John stood at the door, as if expecting to be kicked out, or told, "Well, you've figured out what to do next." But no one chased him out. No one was rushing him. "Lie down," his father said. "I don't have a new bed. Just this one. But it's clean. And it's been tried and tested over the years. Even the cat couldn't ruin it when he was alive." "Where will you be?" "In the chair. I used to sleep in it when my back hurt. It's just a habit now." John sat down. He ran his hand over the fabric. Then leaned back. His eyes didn't close right away. His body didn't trust. It was still waiting for a catch, like a child who'd been promised not to be hit, but had been. "Dad," he said quietly, as if unsure. "Uh-huh. Did you ever wonder what I'd be like if you were different?" Harold looked into the darkness. "Of course I did. And then I realized you'd still be you. Just maybe a little less breakable. I wish I was different." "I don't." "Why not?" "Because then I wouldn't be waiting for you like this. I wouldn't have hoped. I wouldn't be looking for you. Which means I wouldn't need you so much." Silence. The floor of the house creaked, somewhere in the corner, from old age. It was as if the building itself sighed. "I'm scared," John said. "I'm scared, too. What if I mess it up again? Then we'll just start again. From the beginning. Even from the floor. Even from that phone call where no one talks, but you can hear everything." John was silent. Finally, his eyes closed. His shoulders relaxed. He fell asleep without hugging his pillow, without pulling the blanket up to his chin. Just fell asleep, like a man who, for the first time in a long time, wasn't afraid to wake up. Harold was sitting next to him, in a chair, with a blanket on his lap. Not reading. I wasn't looking at my phone. Just sat there. Listened to my son's breathing. Sometimes love is just a silence where someone is breathing and you are listening. And that's enough. It was a noisy morning. At least by the standards of the house, where silence usually hung like cobwebs from the ceiling. Harold got up first, made coffee, opened the window. Outside, a garbage truck grumbled, a dog barked, someone's lawnmower was already working somewhere in the distance. Life went on as if there had been no war, no clinics, no years of emptiness. John stepped out into the hallway barefoot, wearing the very shirt Harold had brought to the hospital. Hair disheveled, pillow prints on his face. He stopped in the kitchen doorway, stretched, yawned. "Do you always get up this early? When you get old, your back doesn't give you a choice." "I thought it was because the soul sings at dawn. Only people who don't pay their taxes sing. The rest of us get coffee." He poured his son a cup. Put it on the table. No warmth, but no strain. Just the kind of care that doesn't require words. They ate breakfast in silence. Harold was doing a crossword puzzle. John was leafing through an old newspaper, clearly a month old. His hand automatically reached for a cigarette, but did not reach for it. And that was a victory. "Let's go for a walk," Harold suggested. "Where?" "To the market. We should buy something alive. Milk, bread. Maybe some apples. So the house won't be a museum of the past." Won't anyone recognize me there? If they do, they'll say you're my nephew from Georgia. With a heavy accent and an even heavier temper. The market was just as John remembered it as a kid. Only the faces had changed. Instead of Mr. Rawls and his cheese, there was now a girl with a piercing and a tomato-shaped tattoo on her arm. Instead of Mrs. Clark with her pies, there were two guys in aprons and a fancy coffee counter. But the smell was the same: fresh bread, wet cardboard, paint spilled under the counter. John walked beside his father, and he felt like he wasn't quite real. Like it was all an illusion that someone was about to erase. But nothing disappeared. People looked at him without recognizing him. And if they did, they pretended they didn't. "Oh, Mr. Stanton," came a voice. On the left. At the table with the jars of jam. A gray-haired man with a round face waved. "Long time no see." "Yes, I haven't been out much," Harold replied. "And who is that with you?" The man asked curiously, nodding at John. "That's my son, John. He's recently returned. Remember, he used to work here at the station." The man stood still for a moment. Then he held out his hand. Of course, of course. You've been away. We missed you. You were a good guy. Good hands. I'm sorry I didn't help you out back then. We all have our hard times." John shook my hand. His lips trembled. But he got through it. "It's okay. We weren't all perfect. The important thing is that you're here again," the salesman added. Coming back was an act. They walked back with two bags, one with apples, the other with a warm bun. On the way Harold joked, "Well, honorable citizen. You're not hiding anymore." "I'm not hiding. I'm just not used to the light yet. I'll tell you a secret, nobody gets used to it. You just learn not to squint." There was a commotion at the station on their way back. Someone's car was blocking the exit, passers-by were arguing, one of the guards was waving his arms, obviously a new, young, important-looking man. He tried to pull someone away from the platform. The crowd was buzzing. Harold stopped, squinted. "Something's wrong. Shall we go take a look?" John hesitated, but nodded. The old fear of being recognized, of being erased, was still there. But it no longer controlled him. They came closer. And then the scene became clear. At the entrance stood a man, elderly, with a crutch. Gray stubble, his clothes old but clean. He was saying something to the guard, gesturing to the schedule. He obviously didn't listen to him. He shoved him with his shoulder, pushed him away, not with anger, but with that peculiar irritation of those who think they are in charge. "Sir, I told you to get out of here. This is not a waiting area. You don't have a ticket. I just want to know when my grandson's coming. He was supposed to get off at platform 3, the aisle is closed. Don't interfere. Go away." And that's when John stepped forward. "Hey." His voice sounded harsh. Even he was surprised. The guard turned, bowing his head slightly. "And who are you?" "I'm the man who was in that man's shoes. Not yesterday. Not a week ago. But many months ago. I know what it's like to stand here when no one can see you. We've got the manual, and we've got the eyes." The guard froze. There was a pause. People were listening. The old man with the crutch lowered his head. His hands were trembling. Too much attention, and not what he wanted. "Just let him sit down," John added. "He's not asking for much. He's just waiting for someone important." Harold stepped next to him. Put his hand on his son's shoulder. Didn't say anything. Just being there was enough. The guard stepped back. Silently. No apology. But he moved. The old man walked to the bench. Sat down. Clutched his crutch. Thanked him with a nod. You're not helping yourself now, Harold said quietly. I'm helping myself, too. Because if I don't stand up for him, that means the old John is still in there, and he'll lose again. They left without waiting for applause. There wasn't any. But it was a victory. Not over anyone. Over himself. You know, Harold said, outside the house, if Mom were alive, she'd be proud. Wouldn't you be? I would be, too. Just in my own way. No fanfare. At least without the belt. I left the belt in the past. Where the fear is. Now it's just apples and tea. They laughed. In the evening they sat on the veranda. Autumn was coming imperceptibly, the leaves on the maple trees were still holding on, but there was something farewell in the air. Harold poured tea. John held the mug with both hands, not from the cold, but because it was easier to concentrate. On the present. On himself. Tomorrow will be exactly 1 year, he said without looking. From what? The morning I woke up in the workshop. Alone. With a bottle that seemed like a godsend. I didn't think I'd live to see another one. And then sitting on the veranda drinking tea, Harold finished. The world knows how to joke. Sometimes in your direction. I don't know how to apologize. And I don't know how to give it. But maybe you don't have to. We're not a court of law. We're a family. It's not guilty or acquitted. It's just stay or go. I stayed. So did I. They were silent. A motorcycle engine howled in the neighbor's street. Dogs barked. Someone lit a lamp in the window across the street. Life went on. No pathos. No marches. But it went on. What if everything falls apart again? John asked. Then we'll put it back together. Together this time. He didn't sound like a teacher. Not like a wise man. He spoke as a man who had lost too, who had been angry, silent, frustrated. And now he just wanted to be there for her before it was too late. I want to get a job, John said quietly. I don't know where. But I don't want to sit around. I want to be useful. To someone. You will be. First to yourself. Then the others. Silence again. But now it's no longer death, no longer sticky. But a silence with the breath of two people in it. Harold pulled a badge out of his pocket. The very same one. Twirled it in his fingers. Then he put it on the table next to him. You want to keep it? Do I have to? No. I'm just not hiding behind it anymore. I'm here now. Are you? John took the badge. He held it. Nodded. And smiled. No heroics. Just like a man who'd been through it. Yeah. I'm here, too. And that was enough. If you watched the whole thing, it must have affected you, too. What would you do if you were the guard? Write the word respect in the comments if you think that a person's past is not something that can be judged by looks. Let's support those who don't forget who was there for them when others turned away.